Hello, everyone, and welcome to FAIR's free monthly webinar series. My name is Carrie Molkowski, and I am the National Programs Manager at FAIR and your moderator for today's presentation on communicating about food allergies in colleges and universities. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. This presentation will be recorded and posted on the FAIR website in about 7 to 10 days. Please note that for maintaining a quality recording, all attendees will be muted throughout the webinar. If time permits, we will respond to some moderated questions for our presenters at the end of the webinar, which you may submit throughout the broadcast. Because attendees will be muted, we ask that you please submit these via our questions feature in your GoToWebinar panel. For those of you on Twitter, we encourage you to join us in conversation during the broadcast. You can follow along with our webinar live tweets at our handle @foodallergy or #FairWebinar. I'm excited to introduce today's presenters. Laura Lapp is the Vice President of Wellness and Sustainability for Chartwells Higher Education Dining Services. As such, Laura drives enterprise solutions and programs that provide wellness, regulatory, and sustainability strategies across the higher education sector. Laura manages purchasing compliance for the higher education sector and works closely with both culinary and marketing teams to build cohesion within the organization. Laura is a registered dietitian with more than 20 years of nutrition and food service industry experience. She has been with Chartwells for 11 years this fall, first as a regional dietitian and then as Director of Nutrition prior to moving into her current role. Prior to Chartwells, Laura was a clinical dietitian and worked in long-term acute care and ICU. She held a certification in nutrition support from Aspen and also provided outpatient counseling for a variety of disease states and weight management. Some of Laura's favorite hobbies include running, reading, and cooking. Her proudest moment is any time her husband and children eat their vegetables voluntarily, and she loves playing with her Doxy Lloyd and Dobby Madeline. Laura is a graduate of the University of Kentucky. There she studied nutrition and food service as an undergraduate, dietetics and hospitality administration as a graduate student, and completed her dietetics internship. And next I'd like to welcome Terri Brownlee. With a love of nutrition and a passion for great food, Terri helps her clients combine the science of good health and nutrition with the enjoyment and pleasure that comes from good, wholesome food. She has over 20 years of experience in the field of nutrition, with experiences that span from private practice and corporate consulting to food service and nutrition education. In her current role with Appetit, Terri manages strategic nutrition programming throughout colleges and businesses nationwide. Terri works closely with a team of chefs and registered dietitians to bring nutrition and wellness programming to the Appetit cafes. Prior to joining Appetit, Terri served as the nutrition director for Duke University's Diet and Fitness Center and Center for Living, where she directed the comprehensive nutrition services, authored the Diet and Fitness Center cookbook, and served as the media contact for numerous magazine, internet, and television articles. Terri received her Master of Public Health at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. As a foodie, Terri applies her knowledge of nutrition in helping her clients develop a healthier, more holistic approach to food, nutrition, and overall wellness. So I'm very excited to have both Terri and Laura here with us to present today. And at this time, I will turn the webinar over to them.
Thanks, Carrie, and welcome to everyone who's out there on the call today. We appreciate your attendance. As you heard, Laura and I have over 20 years of experience in working in university dining environments, from small to large in a variety of situations. As a disclaimer, I will tell you today that we're going to be talking about broad topics, and you'll hear us say that each college environment is different and there are variations. However, as an industry representative, I can tell you that we are open and want to work with you to meet the dietary needs for you and your student when you go to college. So we're here today to share some of our experiences in hopes that it will help you and your student transition into the college dining environment in a safe and comfortable manner. So let's get started. Amongst the many, many changes you're going to face as you transition to college, campus dining is a biggie for every first-time student, not just students with food allergies. From figuring out what to eat, when to eat, where to eat, and then making choices about how much to eat or how often to eat. I mean, really, you can go to school and get pizza 24/7, but is that what you want to do? So having a food allergy creates some very unique challenges on top of this already transition that you're going to be going through. And these warrant to be addressed with some very specific thought and planning, much like you may have already done when eating away from home prior to college. Many students will also be making more independent food choices than they ever have before. Even though your parents have likely equipped you to take over and manage your allergy yourself, the support you have had from them to date is going to just be a bit further away, maybe a phone call or even a plane ride. We also understand that some students hesitate to self-identify as having a food allergy, but you're going to hear why this added communication, which means telling your school about your allergy, will help support the safest approach to managing your allergy in many college dining environments. Think about it this way. You might be able to, quote unquote, get through on your own, but opening up to the right teams on a college campus can vastly widen the scope of options that can be made available to you. And it can really make the difference between being just okay or really happy with your food choices on your campus. Also know that we guard this information and we honor your privacy. We keep that in mind. So when sharing with us, it's not going to be posted anywhere. We're going to talk with you privately. I can assure you that today's universities have food allergens on their radar. And there are a variety of options and approaches to managing food allergies across various campuses. The food service providers want to create positive and safe dining experiences with and for you when you go to college. So let's go ahead and dig in. So in order to effectively communicate about your allergies, we think it's important for you and your parents to understand a bit more about the typical college dining environment. And remember, there's always variances to these. The information that I'm getting ready to share with you is really an upfront, under-the-hood reality check on some key aspects that you're going to encounter in college dining. Please be assured that we are successfully able to serve the vast majority of food allergic students, even in these environments that I'm going to tell you about. But they're just different than what you may have experienced in your home kitchen. And our purpose today is to help you understand these key differences so that you're better equipped to ask the right questions, talk to the right people, and really set yourself up for success in managing your food allergies when you get to campus. So there are some critical differences to keep in mind between what you have experienced in the high school environment and what you will encounter in colleges. First of all, colleges generally do not create individualized emergency plans for food allergic students. While you may choose, and we certainly encourage you, to seek an individualized plan through the University Offices of Disability Services, these plans are generally going to be more focused on the food and facility accommodations that can be made for you. They will not focus on emergency response plans as you might previously be accustomed to seeing, and for this reason, it's critical that you know what to do. For example, if you suspect you're having a reaction, don't go back to your room by yourself. Something you might not have thought about before. So you really want to think through what you might do in an emergency. Make sure to carry your prescription medications at all times, and we strongly suggest, if you're comfortable, talking with those that you eat with or spend a lot of time with, like friends, old and new, and your coaches or whoever you're going to be spending time with on campus, so they know about your food allergies and they know how to help. All colleges have campus-wide emergency response protocols, and the dining teams know what to do, but we want you to know what to do for yourself as well. A second key difference is just the sheer volume of other students that you may be dining with. Many common dining venues on campuses serve hundreds, if in some cases even thousands of students. And what does this mean to you, you might ask? Well, not to stereotype too much, but I am going to do it a little bit. College students, well, they're not always going to be the most tidy students. So despite all of our best efforts to provide dedicated serving utensils, keep food segregated, etc., areas in the cafe where students serve themselves may be high risk for cross-contact, but a bit more on that detail a little bit later. College dining has also become an amenity on most campuses. So you will oftentimes see modern restaurant-style kitchens that prepare a wide variety of meals, from the expected pizza and comfort foods to authentic ethnic ingredient or ethnic foods, and really foods of most any type. And these campuses and these foods are not just there on pizza day, they're there every day. And so you're going to see a much wider variety of meals to choose from than you may have previously experienced. So at this final point is the one that we think is really important for food allergic students to understand. So let's dig a little bit deeper into this and the types of dining venues and styles of services most commonly found on today's college campuses. So instead of being served a safe meal or a meal that's prepared with just a few other selections, a university campus will often have many different dining locations with different styles of service. Most commonly, you will find two basic types of cafes: residential dining halls that boast, in many cases, all-you-care-to-eat dining, and retail environments, which are basically restaurants of various sizes that can be campus-specific concepts, like a local substation, or a local restaurant concept, or even national chains can show up on college campuses, as you might have observed. Within these venues, you will also find various styles of service, such as a self-service buffet type station like salad bars, pizza, condiments, or cereal bars, served areas that can be made to order, such as stir-fry stations or Mongolian grills, and served areas that are more ready to serve foods, like comfort foods, for example. College also means eating in other environments, like public restaurants close to campus, club or dorm gatherings, athletic events, departmental parties, and more. So foods in these situations may or may not be part of your meal plan, and even more importantly, they may or may not be prepared by the same dining service that provides meals in the dining hall and retail locations. You will most likely face food choices in settings where the food is not part of the campus dining program. Between Laura and I, we easily work with more than 200 different universities, and I would say it's actually a lot more than that. And though there are similarities, the meal plan options and requirements vary tremendously by campus. So the takeaway message here that you want to be aware of is be aware of these differences and ask questions about all the options at the schools that you are considering attending. You'll want to understand the meal plan participation requirements, as well as which dining locations are part of your meal plan and which are not, and who are the right points of contact for which dining locations that you might eat in, so you know who to reach out to for additional information. Another aspect of college dining is how our kitchens operate. Cooking from scratch is becoming more and more popular on college campuses today. Most schools are doing some level of scratch cooking, even if it's not 100% of the menu. And this means that instead of a chef or a manager reading and relying on the ingredient or allergen information for a finished or pre-made product, such as a lasagna, a soup, or a salad dressing, chefs are making these foods from scratch from individual ingredients and then communicating about what ingredients they used in that food in a variety of ways, from online and in-cafe signage to individual communication with students. So what does that really mean for the food allergic student? Well, this is one of those reality checks that I mentioned was coming. Campus kitchens are oftentimes managing more than 2,000 separate individual ingredients that they combine in thousands of ways. And why? Why do we need so many, you might ask? Well, in addition to serving large numbers of students, we are also providing 20-plus meals per week, more if you count those popular late-night dining and fourth meal options, snacks, and grab-and-go. And then foods for catering and special campus events are oftentimes prepared in the same kitchen. So we're serving a wide variety of cuisines that include authentic and ethnic concepts. So while recipes drive what's being produced within a restaurant-style kitchen, you will find many different types of foods prepared in close proximity to one another. And signage can only capture so much of this. This is where we feel having individual communication becomes critical. So first, use the menus and signage provided at your school as a starting point, but a starting point for your decision making. But be willing to dig deeper too. When looking at menus at your school, make sure you're prepared and know common sources of your allergens. I know it sounds crazy, but I talk to students all the time that seem to not know some of the common foods that contain their allergens. Then build on this by communicating with campus food providers. Managers and chefs at each location are prepared to answer questions, advise you of possible cross-contact risks, like, for example, if their location has a dedicated fryer that helps them avoid certain allergens in fried foods or not. It'll vary widely by campus. Our staff will also tour you through the kitchen, share package labels for commonly used products, discuss areas of the menu that might be consistently safe for your needs versus ones that might require more day of communication. And they can also provide ideas for any individual plans that we need to make, such as the purchase of a specific brand product when necessary. Another key element to keep in mind in the open restaurant-style kitchen system is that traditional food handling practices focus on the prevention of foodborne illness through time and temperature controls. While many of these steps are also critical in preventing cross-contact with food allergens, when we know a student has a food allergy, we employ additional steps. And these steps include things like preparing special preparation methods, apron and glove changes, and even how we store products and making sure that certain products are available to you to meet your needs. A critical step in product screening, and this is one that is so important. I want to spend a little bit more time on it now as well. Believe me, we look at our product labels a lot. But remember that 2000 number I mentioned earlier. Our product screenings happen most often in intervals, and we do run into product variability often. So let me tell you what I mean by product variability. It can happen in several ways, and I'm sure you've experienced these at home as well. So variability can happen within a brand. You may have experienced this at home when you look at labels from seemingly like products that are maybe in different package sizes, like a snack pack of cookies versus a whole package of the same brand of cookies. We see this too in different pack sizes or cases that might be used in different ways across the campus. We also see variation due to substitution of products. When suppliers are quote-unquote out of something, they might substitute what might appear to be a like product, so that item might have different allergens. When we are working with food allergic students, this is something that we can help manage. Our chefs and managers know how to check for these substitutions, look at the substituted products, and communicate about updated allergen information. The last variation is probably the one that is the most tricky, and that is variation due to product reformulation. Currently, there's no notification system to flag products that have changed in some way. We most often catch these in our routine product screening or because we note that the package has changed in some other way. Maybe it looks different, or it's a different size or a different color, and it prompts us to go and look at that. So I've recently seen that the food allergen experts recommend that you look at these products multiple times for use at home, and even up to 3 times at purchase, when you store them, and again prior to consuming them. Remember that 2,000 ingredients? For us, checking products 3 times represents a very difficult operational challenge in most kitchens. But by teaming together, this problem is solvable as well. We can manage this. We seek to keep our information as up to date as possible, and we'll provide a package label you can review at any time. We also have tools that certainly keep product labels on file for you to access easily. But no matter the system, if there are key ingredients you wish to review, just let us know anytime and we will share those labels. So considering the variables that we've discussed so far about the restaurant-style kitchen systems and the variability in products, you'll find that on most campuses today, we will want to take additional steps when we know that you have a food allergy. When notified, campuses, although vary in approach, but most will offer a combination of options that span from enhanced communication channels, systems for students to order specific meals, specially prepared meals, also polling safe options and holding them for students to avoid risky situations. But all of these solutions shift in focus a bit from the traditional food safety model. They shift and they make sure that we include identification of ingredients and managing cross-contact and product screening as primary concerns for making sure that food is safe for our food allergic students. So as I wrap up this section, my section, I did promise to address the self-service stations more specifically. These stations exist in most cafes to expedite the number of people who can easily move through a cafe in a short period of time, the time that many students have for their meals. We take steps to manage certain aspects of these stations, like ensuring that each item has its own serving utensils, grouping foods that are sources of allergens together, and in some cases, even limiting what is on a self-service station or limiting open containers of high-risk foods. But as you can imagine, users may not realize the impact that they have on cross-contact when they cross over using a serving spoon or other serving utensils. And it's just natural that there will be drips and spills, even when it might not be obvious. So let me tell you a real story about what happened in one of my locations a few years ago. A student who had been safely eating with us for 4 years in her college career came in one morning, ate one of the same breakfast choices she had eaten all along, a waffle with strawberries, but started having a reaction as she walked to class. Once safe, she contacted us, and as you can imagine, we were concerned and immediately conducted a thorough investigation, starting with the usual suspects. We were thinking, did a product change and we didn't know about it? Or did we accidentally introduce something to that station that had not previously been there that introduced an allergen? We found no clear answers. None of those were the obvious sources. So our staff took the time to observe that station for a few days, and we realized what had happened. Another student, getting creative as they do, decided to mix peanut butter from way across the cafe, not even on the same station. Mix peanut butter into her waffle batter, and then use the shared waffle iron to cook her waffle. So you know what happened. So what's the takeaway message in this and self-serve stations? Be very cautious with these areas of cafes. In fact, I usually advise students who experience anaphylactic reactions to avoid self-serve areas in most cafes. Now, that doesn't mean that that narrows your selection. In fact, if you're going to eat from some of these stations, there are some things you can do. You can be the first one there, be there before some of that cross-contact starts to happen. And if you're not comfortable with that, which I'm not sure I would be either, it doesn't mean that your food offerings for these stations are not available to you. We will just deliver them to you a different way. We'll serve you from a fresh batch that has not been out at the station so that you can enjoy the same choices that other students have with the minimal risk for cross-contact. And now, with the knowledge from kind of the behind-the-scenes look of what's going on in the kitchen, I'm going to pass along to my colleague Laura to talk with you more specifically about communicating before, during, and after your college decision process. So take it away, Laura.
Thank you, Terri. So when we talk about communication, one of the most effective ways to ensure dining success with a food allergy on college campuses is to really begin having some conversations as early as possible with campus administration, with housing, with the disabilities office, and of course with dining services. We strongly encourage you to begin asking questions as early as those first campus tours during the junior year of high school. Ideally, we want you to feel comfortable even before you begin the application process that the chosen schools that you're going to apply to can meet your needs. Many universities have different processes, and they all evaluate reasonable accommodations differently. So it's very important to ask questions and understand the services that are available for each campus you're considering applying to, or those that you may have already applied to. You may find one that meets your needs more readily or provides a solution that fits your particular situation most effectively. And in many cases, this comes down to housing arrangements that might need to be made on any particular campus. It's better not to assume that the university is going to solicit any information from you about your allergy during the housing application process. Some may, but most do not, and they're not required to do so by law. So it's actually your responsibility as a student to reach out to the disabilities office if you need any accommodations for your food allergy. It's always important to ask questions about housing accommodations and dining accommodations as early in the process as possible. If you wait until you've already received a meal plan and housing assignment, it can be much more challenging to modify, although it is not impossible. And for dining services in particular, arrangements can be made prior to any campus visit to speak with dining services and the food service director. We encourage students to contact us prior to a scheduled visit so we can make one-on-one time to discuss how we can best meet your needs. And we do that routinely in both Terri and my scope of services. So when we think about food allergies, we do typically consider the 8 major allergens first. And certainly most food allergy trainings address those 8 major allergens, which impact about 90% of food allergic reactions. However, as we all know, any food can potentially cause an allergic reaction, and it's common for individuals to have allergies to more than one food. It's important for dining services and the Student Disability Services Office to also understand specifically what foods cause your allergic reaction. This assists us when we review menus, recipes, and food preparation and storage with you. And it could also influence your housing accommodations and can provide valuable information on how other areas of campus are navigated. Specific plans for your accommodations can be customized based on each individual situation. And from a dining services perspective, this may mean provision of specialty products dedicated to specific student access, as Terri mentioned earlier. From your perspective as a student, it's important that you're familiar with the foods that cause your allergy as well. Again, as Terri mentioned, we do often encounter students who are not really familiar with common sources of their food allergen. And sometimes students might not even be really familiar with various tree nuts and things of that nature. And on our menus, we often include an allergen in the item name. So for example, we might call a menu item pistachio pesto. It's important if you have a tree nut allergy that you know and understand that pistachios are tree nuts, and that's an item that should be avoided. Once you're accepted to a school and you've made a final determination that you're going to attend a particular school, you should go back to the campus disabilities office and call or email or visit if you're close by to register your food allergy as a disability and seek accommodations that are protected by the law as soon as possible if you feel this is necessary. Waiting until you arrive on campus during freshman orientation can really cause a lot of unnecessary issues because this is such a busy time for everyone on campus. There are thousands of students, brand new students to campus, and everyone's trying to understand schedules, and everyone's working through a lot of processes. So as much as you can do ahead of time is really to your benefit. Your school's ADA office may require specific documentation, and then they're going to want to have some follow-up conversations with you and other departments on campus, including dining services, regarding any specific accommodations you might need. Dining services oftentimes will already have some readily available options that are intended to address many students, but based on your individual needs, these are going to vary in suitability and what's acceptable for you. And your campus administration makes decisions about any accommodations across campus, including dining services, so make sure that you reach out to them as early as possible. After the ADA office has discussed and agreed upon some accommodations with you, follow back up with the campus food service team. This is the time to discuss any specific details and lingering questions you might have. Some of the types of questions that dining services can answer for you specifically would include the training and frequency of training for hourly associates and management staff on food allergies. If you're concerned about something in particular to ensure that the staff is trained about, this is the perfect time to ask those types of questions. We can also answer questions about the level of transparency for recipes and product ingredients. Most dining services teams will be able to provide recipes for the majority of products they serve, as well as ingredient labels for packaged items. And as Terri mentioned, there are often times when we find there are some variances from one package to another when it looks like the same item. So make sure that you ask those questions and you understand what's available within each one of the locations you'll be dining in. Make sure that you've met the director and the chef on campus if you haven't done so already. Have you developed a good rapport with this person, and do you have contact information for them? Many campuses do offer one-on-one support and will truly go above and beyond to assure your safety. And lastly, make sure you feel comfortable with the agreed-upon plan. If there's something that bothers you or a lingering question that you have, speak up about it as soon as possible. Address it even before you arrive on campus if possible, to ensure that once you get to campus, the food allergy is not your concern, and you can concern yourself with finding your classes and acclimating yourself to your new roommate and making new friends, because that's really what college life is all about. Once you're on campus, as Terri and I both mentioned, the first few days on campus are a really hectic time. Everybody's busy, and this makes these very high-risk situations for students with allergies, especially if some previous adjustments have not already and accommodations have not already been assessed. Special welcome events, social activities, and a lot of the newfound freedom all contribute to this risk. In addition, most dining services teams are very busy during this period as well. And that's because we have a lot of back-to-school events and new students asking a lot of questions. And as a student with a food allergy, you should be aware of who's providing food for the different events you're attending on campus. Your allergy information is not shared between departments or prior to events unless someone specifically polls potential attendees about food allergies. So some of those previously made plans discussed with the Disability Services Office or dining services might not be in play. So make sure that you're aware if meals are provided by outside caterers, by student groups, or even other restaurants so that you can take proper precautions. It's also important to get to know the rest of the dining services team as soon as possible. Touch base even before you get to campus via phone and email. Make sure that they know that you're coming and that they're ready for you. Keep in mind that many students come through the dining halls, and associates serve a lot of meals every day. Building some rapport early on with our hourly associates will help ensure recognition, and eventually the team will get to know you very well and they'll start anticipating your needs. If you have an emergency treatment plan or a 504 plan, you can share it with the Office of Student Disabilities to provide information, and in some cases this information may be helpful to dining services as well. But there are not official 504 plans in higher education, as Terri mentioned. Be sure to discuss with the Office of Student Disabilities how that plan might be implemented on campus and what aspects of that plan would be most valuable. It's very important that you keep any personal medications on you at all times, regardless of what your plan may have looked like when you were in high school. Regular contact is also very important. Those plans that you made initially prior to coming to campus might need to be changed. And these plans can always be updated or modified. So it's important to alert dining services and the ADA office if your needs change. And your needs can change for a variety of reasons. Maybe your class schedule needed to change at the last minute and you realize you're not going to have time to get dinner any longer at the location that you previously thought you were going to be dining in. We can help you find other alternatives on campus, but it's important for us to know that information as soon as possible so we can get you in touch with the right people. And then lastly, make sure that you check in often. Dining services often does special meals for holidays and other events or monotony breakers and may modify the menu to accommodate seasonal changes. There's often a lot going on, and it's hard to plan for these too far in advance. So check back in regularly to see what's happening. As Terri mentioned, few universities serve food at just one location. Most have food in a lot of different locations. And campuses may offer franchise options and national brands that you're already familiar with. Some may offer student-run venues that provide junior and senior level students the opportunity to actually experience what it's like to run a food service operation. And then a lot of them have a resident dining facility of some kind, as Terri mentioned, which is either an all-you-care-to-eat location or a retail location. The same company may not operate each dining location on campus, so it's really important for you to understand as a student that for the sake of variety, the choices are going to vary considerably in terms of menu options and ingredients. And it's important to familiarize yourself with the options that are most appealing to you, and then understand who you should speak with at each location about recipes and ingredients. As Terri mentioned, your information is not shared from one location to another unless you specifically ask us to help you share that information across campus. We do value your privacy, and as such, there's not a mass email going out to every dining location on campus with your picture associated with it and your allergens. That's not how it's handled. So it's really up to you to make sure that you help us initiate those conversations for you and with you. Some of the student responsibilities, I think we've covered a lot of this information already just through the natural course of the conversation, but I think it also bears repeating. The dining experience on college campuses, again, as Terri mentioned, is extremely different from the experience in high school. Being your own self-advocate on campus is critically important. Many campuses do provide information by including, allergens and recipe names, as I mentioned, the pistachio pesto, or they might provide ingredients for specific products. But students should really come to campus with skills and the ability to read a product label and interpret some basic ingredient information as it applies to their allergy. And if there are questions, please ask us. It's always safer to err on the side of caution than to risk having a reaction. And when associates are preparing your food, speak up about your food allergy. There's a really big difference between a like and an allergy. And associates should be reminded that you actually have an allergy and not a preference so that your food can be handled safely. And a good example of that is one of those made-to-order stations that Terri mentioned earlier. Asking them to, say, not add cheese to a salad can obviously avoid adding cheese if you don't like cheese, but if you have a milk or a dairy allergy, you probably want that associate to take the extra step of changing their gloves and washing their hands, and perhaps even pulling some lettuce and additional toppings from a different area of the operation back in the kitchen where the rest of the ingredients have not been coming across contact with that cheese that's on the station. So make sure that you speak up. Telling people what you need is the best way to ensure that your needs are met. Staying in touch with the ADA office and dining service is also really important. It helps everyone understand what's working and what isn't working for you. Your plans, again, might need to be modified, and people are always willing to help when we know that there's an issue and we can help you troubleshoot a new solution. Reporting any challenges that you're having as quickly as possible really helps us find the fastest resolution for you. Challenges can range from class schedules and missing meals to having trouble finding appropriate meal options on occasion. The last thing your school, your parents, or the dining services team wants to hear is that you've gone a whole semester and had trouble eating. And believe it or not, that does happen. Everyone is available to help. We just want to know and need to know what's going on so that we can help find some quick resolution. And then lastly, as mentioned previously, carrying your personal medications at all times is absolutely critical. In the university environment, you're going to be in a lot of different spaces on any given day, and there's thousands of other people that are sharing these spaces with you. When you think about the portability of food, that can really contribute to allergen risks anywhere on campus. As Terri mentioned, you don't want to plan to go home, you don't want to plan to go back to your dorm room by yourself if you feel like you're starting to have a reaction. And you don't want to find yourself in a situation where access to your necessary medication is an issue should you have a reaction. So if you've been issued some kind of medication to manage your allergic reactions, make sure that you keep that on yourself at all times. I think probably one of the biggest misconceptions is that there might be a one-size-fits-all approach to managing food allergies on college campuses, but the reality is that options are going to vary from one campus to another, and this comes both within the scope of, looking at a self-operated campus dining services campus to different management companies, and then just variances from a franchise operation to a managed internally operation. So one of the key things is to make sure that you're aware of the communication channels that are available for your campus. Bigger campuses may have phone numbers and signage that's posted around campus, alerting you to resources and contact information. Smaller campuses may provide the direct personal cell phone number of the executive chef, just as one option. But familiarize yourself with how the dining team and the campus administration wants that communication handled. You should always be able to discuss recipes and products with the culinary team on campus at any time. As Terri mentioned, most are willing to give you a tour of the kitchen, of all the prep and storage areas too. So just because you don't see that option posted or someone doesn't mention it, doesn't mean that that option's not there. Just ask us. Again, as Terri mentioned, many campuses provide alternative foods, and sometimes these are special ordered for an individual and they're held in a designated space, and other times they're available to all students. So again, just because you don't see any specialty items does not mean that they're not available or cannot be made available. Make sure that you ask if that's something that you'd like to see. And then, does your campus offer a point of service that caters to food allergies? If not, most campuses will provide food from the kitchen, as Terri mentioned, that hasn't been put out for service, or will prepare special meals either upon request or pre-made and held in a designated location. Again, these options may not be readily visible to all students, especially when you're running through as, just doing a campus tour and they kind of walk you through the dining operation and say, so here's the resident dining facility. Make sure that you ask those follow-up questions. Terri, I'm going to turn it back over to you to discuss the additional resources.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. Just thank you both. That was so thoughtful and insightful, and I think we really got a good view into college dining and the styles of services that are available, and also what questions to ask. So as you'll see here, for additional information, I'd like to point out some of these highlighted resources that are on this slide. All of these are helpful tips for the prospective or current student as well as parents. And then lastly, Jim Long's webinar, which will really highlight some of the disability laws that are associated with colleges and being a student with food allergies there. Also for additionally, whether it's help like choosing a school or questions that you may have about dorm life or dining services, again, what are the legal obligations that schools have to provide accommodations? FAIR has a variety of tools and resources that can really help incoming freshmen and upperclassmen feel, really prepared and confident, as well as their parents too, that they'll be able to manage their food allergies as they move on to this really new and exciting next chapter in their lives. So I think we do have some time for some questions, which is great. To remind you all again who are out there listening, if you haven't had a chance to ask yet, you can use your questions panel in the GoToWebinar function and send them to us now. But we had a few that came in, so I'm going to start. The first one is, do you have any advice for a student who is nervous to eat out and not willing to cook for themselves? I don't know if Laura or Terri, either of you, have come across this scenario and have any insight or any advice to give.
I was
start. Go ahead, Terri.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's not uncommon at all. There are often times when a campus might suggest, based on the severity of a student's allergy, that perhaps some housing accommodation changes are made, and maybe the student could be released from the meal plan expectation. But then that often leaves us concerned with how is that student going to eat if they are not familiar with cooking for themselves, or or really just don't want to cook for themselves. So I think that really goes back to that open communication and dialogue with the dining services team on campus, making sure that they understand what your specific needs are. I can cite multiple occasions where we've had a dedicated chef or a manager who's really committed to making sure that a student can have something safe to eat every single day. And, they'll go the extra mile. They will prepare something special for an individual student. We've often worked out times and cases in advance where we might prepare a certain number of meals and keep them in a designated location for the student. So there's not always a conversation at every meal, but the student knows specifically where they can go and pick up, a specialty meal or a designated meal specific for them. And it goes back to building that rapport with the dining services team. And once they really start to understand what your needs are, you'll be amazed at the level of care that associates will give to you. We've had students come back and say, so-and-so got to know me so well, she would come up and let me know when the cookies were safe for me to eat that day, or when the cookies were not safe for me to eat that day. So that happens more frequently than we give credit for, I think. But there is that high level of care that a lot of our associates and a lot of our chefs and managers feel in protecting these students and making sure that they can dine safely. Terri, do you want to add something?
No, I think Laura covered it all, except to just add to that many colleges do have opportunities for students to cook for themselves, and it really is not uncommon for students to not necessarily want to take that option as being their first option. And one of the things that I have experienced numerous times is in communicating initially with a school that a student or a parent will kind of wanting to make sure that they communicate the seriousness of their particular food allergen issue, that they'll use language that maybe makes the college or university a little bit leery that they can safely feed the student. And so while we encourage you to certainly tell us truthfully what's going on with you, I would also say that we always need to give it a try. And we certainly don't want to put anybody in harm's way, but the great majority of the time we are able to feed even students who have very sensitive and serious allergic reactions in many of our locations.
Great. Thank you both, Laura and Terri. That definitely will help ease the minds of some of the students who are a bit nervous to eat out and perhaps aren't interested in cooking for themselves. Another question we got was, how do colleges typically provide ingredient information to students?
I can take that one if you want me to, Laura.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, well, it's really all over the place. Many schools are providing ingredient statements online or on signage, either a major ingredient statement or down to the sub-ingredient level. But what we see more commonly, I think more consistently, is that universities use a variation of descriptive menuing and restaurant-style descriptors to call out key ingredients in foods so that people get a good sense of what that food contains. And then what they want to do is have students then interact with the managers and chefs in that location to make sure that what is on that sign is there was no variation in preparation that day that was unaccounted for, and then also to check brands of products. So again, with that product variability, that we're rechecking those labels again before the student makes the final decision about consuming that product. And while that might seem to students, well, I don't have time, I don't want to come in the middle of lunch and have to take 10 minutes, I think the key message here is that we can find ways to communicate with you quickly, that it doesn't have to be something that takes an extra half hour every time you come to the cafe to track down, and we'll work with you to make sure that that communication happens.
Great, thank you, Terri. Another question, does your training for dining staff address how to recognize allergic reactions and how to respond to them?
I can take that one, Terri, if you'd like.
The simple answer is yes, but Laura can go into more detail.
That is definitely the short answer. And I would add to that all of our teams are trained to call 911 in the event of any emergency or any allergic reaction that's observed in the dining hall. It's obviously the student's decision whether or not they need to actually follow up and go to the hospital, but we do call 911. And then a lot of campuses also have emergency plans and might have emergency responders on campus, and those systems are activated as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. One more. Do you have any tips for how students can prepare for college, just in general, before they get there?
I can take that one. I think that the message you've heard from both Laura and I over and over today is to really dig in, even in the decision-making process, and really ask a lot of questions, things that might seem obvious, but to keep asking those questions. I am personally in the process right now with my senior of completing college tours, and I'm finding, surprisingly, that sometimes dining services is just part of, and we see students here, and it's not a very deep message. And so you may really, if you're considering a certain school or you're making a college visit, really make an effort to make an appointment with dining services when you go on those pre-visits before the decisions are being made. Sometimes we talk to students and they say, hey, I'm a junior, I'm thinking about coming here, and I'd like to go ahead and talk to you about what you guys can do for me. And I think that's really wise to pre-plan in that way.
Great. Thank you so much, Terri. Another question had come through, which I think you kind of just answered right there. We had a few people asking, because Laura, you spoke on tours before, and they were kind of wondering if you had any tips for how to learn about a university's food allergy accommodations before you take a tour. So if I gather from what you said, probably making an appointment with dining services before that tour is scheduled or before the pre-visit was made would be an appropriate option, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So just a few more if you guys are up for it. Is there any way parents and students can look up a list of Chartwells and Bon Appetit colleges?
For Chartwells, all of our campuses are available at dineoncampus.com. There's a drop-down list that will list all of the campuses that we are currently providing dining services for.
Our client list for Bon Appetit is a little more close, and so I don't know that there's a public list that you could look. You can look on our banco.com website and see a sample of the campuses that we serve, but it is not 100% inclusive list. But if you are thinking about a specific campus and you care to reach out to me directly, I will be glad to let you know whether or not we service a certain campus.
Great. Thank you all so much. It looks like we have one more question, so we can end with this. In your experience, can college meetings include meeting the chef so that parents can directly ask them questions?
I can jump in there first. Absolutely. Yes, we can make sure that there can be arrangements and meetings made with the chef. And we do encourage parents to be involved, but I also really want to make a plug here for having the student initiate a lot of those conversations and definitely be part of those conversations, because the student is going to be the one managing that relationship on a day-to-day basis. So it's really important that the student is involved, that the student is asking questions, and that the student is, the one initiating and managing that relationship going forward. But yes, we do love to have the chefs involved, and quite often they're one of the biggest advocates for addressing any particular needs that an individual student may have.
Okay, great, thanks. And if you don't mind me asking just one more, I lied, I'm sorry. Do you guys know if colleges ever try to partner another food allergic student with another student with similar allergies, if there's any kind of connection that they work on to introducing students with food allergies together?
It's a great idea, and I do have some specific colleges that will have kind of subsets of dining committees. We have dining committees on almost every college campus, which are groups of students that help, contribute to the direction of some of the choices in the campus dining system. And oftentimes there will be some subcommittees of students, and they might be under the umbrella of like special dietary needs, but might mix in students with multiple types of issues, including food allergies. But I do see that quite commonly, that there are groups like that on campuses.
Yeah, and I would add to that, I've seen a couple of times, we have two campuses that I'm thinking of off the top of my head. One where one of our RDs was trying to organize kind of a transitionary group of incoming students with food allergies. One of the challenges that we have with that is, of course, that we need students to come to us and let us know that they do have a food allergy. And then some other campuses might offer some transitionary type services, maybe through student counseling or something like that. So it's always worth asking that question for any campus that you're considering attending, because if they aren't offering those types of services in some way, shape, or form already, I see that as becoming certainly something that could further enhance the experience for students with food allergies. And I think the more people that ask for that service, the more likely more campuses are to start providing it.
Great, thank you so much. Again, thank you, and I just want to let everybody know out there, because we are out of time, if you do have any additional questions moving forward, you can feel free to email them to collegeprogram@foodallergy.org, and we will do our best to answer them or send them on to Laura and Terry for some help. Lastly, I'd like to say once again, thank you so much, Laura and Terry, for joining us today and providing some really excellent insights about effectively communicating about food allergies to your college or university. And also, as a reminder, this webinar has been recorded and it will be made available with all of our webinar archives. So if you're looking for more great college and university presentations, you can find them there online. So again, thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you again at our next live webinar broadcast. Thank you.